Friend wasn't allowed in her room unless she was sleeping or changing her clothes. She wasn't allowed to shower for more than 10 minutes. Her brother was also locked out of his room and was forced to take cold showers. Also, they wouldn't masturbate. A good friend of mine went through a season where he didn't have running water at his house, so the rule in the house was that no one could come over unless they brought a couple gallons of water with them to pour into the toilet in the event that they had to poop. No one was allowed to swim in the swimming pool because it was only for decoration. Other than that, they were normal parents. Edit, we were all in high school. There was no threat of anyone drowning. No boy talk. Her mom made us keep the intercom on when we were in her bedroom and would listen to us talk. If we started talking about boys, she would chime in and tell us to change the subject. We were 15-16s and not having the privacy to talk about crushes and stuff felt weird. Edit, as much as I appreciate the concern for a child who might be in an abusive situation, this took place about 25 years ago. She moved out of the house quite some time ago. It wasn't really rule of the house, but my friend's parents were huge helicopter parents. Went to a concert with a friend and we had to call, not text, her parents every hour to let them know we were okay. We were 21-20 seconds and I was close friends with the band we were seeing play. We had to keep our hands above the covers when we went to sleep so they could make sure we weren't doing anything. I was 9. Literally was the last time I spent the night there. Weirdos. Stayed at a friend's house one night and the family communicated exclusively through whispering, not just hushed voices but full on hand to ear. Serious mindfuck. No one was allowed to laugh at the dinner table or talk other than to ask, please pass the. No one was allowed to leave the table, even for a potty emergency, until the dad was done eating. I was around 8, when I went to a friend's place for a playdate and asked for a cup of water. Friend's mum pulls out one of the biggest glasses 8-year-old me had seen and filled it to the brim. I was only used to the small plastic cups at this stage, so was not used to such a large amount of water. After drinking just over a 1/4 of the glass, I went to go pour it out because I didn't want the rest. I was full up. Friend stopped me and said that we weren't allowed to pour out water, we had to drink it. 8-year-old me thought that was weird, but looking back, sure, good way to teach kids not to waste water, especially here in Australia where droughts are so common. So if I wasn't allowed to pour it out, what could I do with it? I thought I would just leave it for later. Friend once again stopped me and explained I wasn't allowed to leave it, I had to drink it all. I said I was thirsty anymore when her mum walked in, and told me that water wasn't allowed to be wasted in this house and I better drink it all. Like right then and there. If you wanted water, you weren't allowed to leave it and come back later. You had to sit there and finish it. 8-year-old me tried to argue why I couldn't leave it for later, and the mum got pissed and had me sit at the kitchen bench stool and finish this massive glass. I sat there grumpily for ages trying to finish this thing so I could go back to playing. I remember getting really uncomfortable because I needed to pee, and sure enough immediately afterwards I was dashing to the toilet. I get teaching kids not to just waste water but let them leave it to come back later. It's water, it won't spoil and they will drink it later. My friend's mom's boyfriend had one of those rooms we weren't allowed in for any reason. Problem was, it was the living room. It was impossible to get to the kitchen without going through that living room. Also couldn't reach the door to the backyard. So I never once entered the kitchen in that house, and any trips to the backyard meant walking out the front door and going through the gate on the side of the house. We had to finish all the milk in the cereal bowl. Like every drop. But we weren't allowed to pick up the bowl or be noisy. Imagine 3 little kids carefully trying to drink milk from a spoon without slurping or scraping the bowl while one scary AF mom watched us in silence. I remember watching a movie at a friend's house with another person, so there were 3 of us sharing a bowl of popcorn. Before any of us went to eat the popcorn, my friend said it was a rule in their house that each person can only pick up one small single piece of popcorn at a time. We'd have to finish chewing it and wait to swallow it until picking up the next one individual piece of popcorn. When I was like 8 years old, I was playing at a friend's house in his room upstairs. Needed to go to the bathroom, so went for a pee in the toilet that was upstairs. His mom heard me from downstairs living room, don't know how. She was probably eavesdrop or something. Was yelled at while peeing that this toilet was not for daytime peeing, nighttime only for some reason. So his mom yelled and demanded the 8-year-old me to stop mid-pee, run downstairs, and finish on the daytime toilet. Never was invited again. Still to this day I don't have a clue what went on there and still have so many unanswered questions. Being a young man, that I had to sit while peeing in their house. And the dad stayed in the bathroom to make sure. Weird. Parents waking us up at like 7 a.m. to make us do chores. Had another friend whose parents were so strict that he often got grounded in the middle of play dates and sleepovers. His parents were wealthy, and he always had the cool toys and electronics, but he was constantly grounded from them. After eating we were forced to brush our teeth, with his parents watching us. One time I refused and then they grabbed the toothbrush and brushed my teeth very aggressively. It stung for 15 minutes after. If I go over now I just know I'm going to brush my teeth. Hated going to his house but my parents never let him come over so I had to go over and we would have sleepovers here and there. They would make us brush our teeth when after we eat breakfast, then after lunch, and then before we start to sleep. Not a friend's house, but my aunt's. She took care of me while my parents went on some trip when I was a kid, and I stayed for about a week. My mom packed me some snacks, my fully charged Nintendo DS, and my MP3 player filled with Hannah Montana songs in my little backpack. As soon as I arrived to my aunt's, who has 3 younger and adopted kids, she took away my snacks because she was worried my little cousins would get jealous and want them. She took away my Nintendo and put it in a box, because apparently The Legend of Zelda is too violent, and she didn't want her kids exposed to that sort of reckless nature. She even took away my MP3 player and put it in that same box because music of any kind was not allowed in the house. Also, she'd made 3 full meals a day. And I'm not talking about just a regular coarse kid meal, I'm talking about an entire plate full that an adult could eat, for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. With me having a small stomach, I physically was unable to finish everything on my plate and I wasn't allowed to leave the table until every single thing on the plate was gone for each meal. I sat at that table for hours smh. That's not even counting the snacks she gave us throughout the day. Let's just say my mom regrets letting me stay with my aunt for that week. I even got super sick because the doctor said I was eating way too much than what a kid is normally supposed to eat. It was miserable and I hated it. Edit, for everyone that keeps asking, she's my mom's sister. When I was around 8 we tried to be playmates with a boy down the street. His parents seemed nice enough to our faces, but were apparently very controlling behind the scenes. The Legos were the biggest standout that comes to mind after all these decades. He had the normal amount of Legos for kids our age, but they were kept in those organizers with a bunch of hard plastic drawers with dividers. Each type of brick had its own place in its own drawer, and each drawer was meticulously labeled with an old school Dymo label maker. Different colors of bricks had their own organizers. He was deathly afraid to take any of them out of their drawers to actually play with them, because apparently even having too many out and assembled at one time would get him into pretty serious trouble. The friendship kind of sputtered out despite the propinquity. We had to walk on a plastic sheet that was everywhere in the house, like a little 2 feet wide trail. No one was allowed to POO in their house. If you needed a POO you had to go to the grocery store, which was a 5-minute walk away. When I was 8 I used to visit a friend that had a dog. I never actually got to meet the dog because when we came over they would lock it up in a wood box. The dog never barked and I couldn't see inside the box. All I ever saw was the extremely large dog poop. They had an old pool that was empty except for pine needles, pine cones and the dog poop that got swept into it. It smelled awful but me and my friend used to play tag/hide and seek around it. At one point I stepped on one of the many piles of poop. My friend told me to take my shoes off and yelled for his mom. She came out, took my shoes and put them in the trash bin. Then I was told it was the rules that if you stepped on dog poop the shoes had to be thrown away instead of washing them off. As a kid I remember being only slightly sad about the shoes but playing tag with landmines was just another fun way to spice up the game. Eventually I was told we were not allowed to play in the back anymore because the dog was getting upset and she even boarded up the back porch so we couldn't sneak out there. I never stepped in poop again, but I also never saw or heard the dog. As a single parent with 3 young children, I used to have a nanny come help out and occasionally she would bring her son. One day as I was picking up my children the nanny's son farted, and she made him stand in the corner. He was only allowed to fart in the bathroom. He was 4. My friend's dad was a huge egomaniac and super controlling. He basically brainwashed his family into believing that he was a great genius and so he was the king of the family. The big rule was that no one was allowed to open food unless he did it first. Like if a bag of chips was in the pantry, no one could eat any until he decided to open the bag. No one could take a slice of pizza until he did first. Everyone was expected to observe the rule and they acted like it was perfectly normal. My friend had a hall with light switches at each end. If you flipped one switch up to turn the light on, you could flip the other switch up to turn the light off again. It was entirely possible to get the light off with both switches in the up position. This drove my friend's wife nuts, so the rule was that you had to keep both switches down when the lights were off. Often, this meant walking the length of the hall to flip a switch, followed by a return trip, in the dark. Around age 5, friends' parents lost their cool when I did the peace sign fingers in a photo. I still don't understand what's wrong with that, but they were irate and made us retake the picture, at her older brother's football game. It wasn't that serious. That family was very Southern Baptist. Maybe Victory Hand is against their religion? No clue. No coughing in the kitchen. It doesn't matter that the kitchen was huge, at least 20 x 20, or if you covered your mouth. And this was 25 years before COVID. I learned the hard way one Thanksgiving. As an invited guest at my friend's house, I naturally entered the kitchen to ask if her mother needed any help. A sudden tickle hit the back of my throat and I coughed to clear it. Her mother gave me the look of death, turned around, picked up the tray with the cooked turkey on it and proceeded to throw it in the garbage. I was mortified. I ended up leaving shortly after. Nobody was allowed to watch any of the TV channels above 12, because the higher number channels were for filthy savages. That limited the house to 3 usable channels. Everyone mentioning rules at their childhood friend's house. This one is my grown-up friend. Can't drink alcohol until the kids are in bed. Okay, I sorta get that, except for the reasoning. The adults in the house, usually my friend, her hubby and I, are in charge of making sure the kids are looked after and are safe, so no booze allowed while they're awake, not even a sip of wine with dinner. 3 of their 4 kids have special needs, so just in case someone needs to go to hospital or something, there are sober adults who can take them as well as supervise the others. Until after the kids have gone to bed. Once they're asleep, then the adults can get absolutely blind drunk. Presumably because no incidents will occur after they go to bed. Like there's zero chance of a kid suddenly going downhill or whatever and needing medical attention. Add that to the fact that one of the kids is a literal insomniac. He has gone for 48 plus hours without sleep many times, due to his medical conditions and the drugs he is prescribed to deal with said conditions, plus the younger 2 will get out of bed whenever they please to join the adults. There have been many times where it's after midnight and we are enjoying cocktails and Cards Against Humanity, and the littlest kid will wake up and get out of bed, and the parents will just shrug and say, "Oh, she's up now, she can stay out here with us because she will wake the others if we put her back, she doesn't want to miss any of the fun," and they'll continue drinking. So no alcohol before the kids go to sleep because they don't want them exposed, but if they wake up in the middle of the night then it's fine. Plus no alcohol so everyone can be sober to supervise the kids. Unless the kids are asleep, because if they suddenly need a hospital then, we are allowed to be as intoxicated as ever. I don't understand it, but I also don't understand the bit about if hubby is away and I am visiting, my friend has to ring him to let him know the kids are asleep and ask if it's okay if she has a drink with me while he's away. She must get permission from him because of the whole someone needs to be sober to supervise rule, even though when he's home, they can both get smashed with no problem. I also don't understand why she's married to a controlling prick in the first place, but that's a whole different story. House rule: when eating dinner with their family, we weren't allowed to have a beverage of any kind, including water, with our meal. Had to wait until we were finished. When I was like 11 or 12, I slept over at one of my friend's houses. I had to go to bed at 8:30 on the dot, and her mom would walk in the bedroom every 15 minutes to make sure we were asleep and not talking. I didn't have a phone so it wasn't like I could occupy myself. I told her mom that it is hard for me to fall asleep that early, and asked if I could hang out outside of the room for a bit until I was tired. Nope, I had to go to bed at 8:30, because I was invited and therefore I need to follow their rules. I stopped having sleepovers there, and started having them with another neighborhood girl, because we had a lot more freedom. The other friend's mom got mad at me for staying over at another friend's house rather than her daughter's. Finally, and ask Reddit for me, I grew up homeschooled up until my first year of high school. Let me tell you, I met a lot of really cool people with awesome families, but also a lot of really strange families. Homeschooling can be great until it's used for the wrong reasons, which in my experience is shockingly common. A list of weird rules I had to follow while over at different houses within homeschooling groups I was a part of. 1. No red nail polish. Her daughters couldn't paint their nails red or even wear the color red. If we were going to come over, we had to remove any red nail polish and wear non-sexual colors. 2. Could not say oh my gosh because it sounded too much like oh my god and it's a sin to take God's name in vain. 3. We needed to cover our shoulders before her brothers, and especially her father, returned home. 4. Not a rule that I personally had to follow, but one family banned the use of Crest toothpaste. Their parents had something against the brand. I'm not sure. One this tbh. 5. Was not allowed to be alone in the same rooms as friend's father. As an adult I get why, but at the time I was like 6. One family I knew wasn't allowed to listen to music that their father didn't like. Not because he didn't like it because it was anti-Christian, he simply just didn't like the sound. They couldn't buy albums or download songs that he wouldn't listen to himself. They were able to listen to a lot of 80s stuff, which isn't a problem, but like, come on. 7. Could not address her parents as anything other than yes sir or yes mm. That's all that I could immediately pull off the top of my head. It's been years LMAO. No touching. No handshakes, hugs, fist bumps, nothing. Whenever I was over at my friend's house, he couldn't touch me and I couldn't touch him. Which was a strange feeling because of how physically affectionate we were at school. We even hugged each other after summer break was over. I had to bring enough meat to feed the house in order to stay overnight. 3 kids, 3 adults and myself. At meals, wiping hands and face if needed on the tablecloth. No napkins. Same tablecloth the following night. My friend had a window unit air conditioner that he wasn't allowed to turn on, so the whole house was unbearably hot. South Texas, no food in the fridge, just tons of homemade paper being processed. He mentioned his mom had mental problems. Eating a sandwich separately. Friend's dad was absolutely fucking nuts. He made us eat the bread, then the meat, then the cheese, and then bread again. It was so fucking weird. We also weren't allowed to drink anything without drinking 2 full glasses of water. Super Christian family had a Puritan thing about anything that was pleasurable, so they weren't allowed to listen to music except worship stuff, and the wildest they ever got was when they were allowed to have like a single chocolate-covered pretzel at the end of dinner once. No going inside until 6 p.m. Fun in the summer, deadly in the winter. This is pretty tame compared to others here, but I had a friend once in the 8th grade. His dad would work out of town for upwards of a month or even more at a time, then be back for a week, maybe 2. When he was gone, that guy's house was the place to be. Could do just about anything we could imagine as long as no damage occurred. When his dad was around, though, things changed. He would pretty much never invite anybody over, and if he did, there was a very active effort to ensure we never landed in the same room as his dad for more than a minute or 2.